territory, shared flood paths, the possible works of collaboration and effective management of territorial risks. We invite onto the stage the Chair, Hakall Bra, Manager of Techno of Mine and Dam with CSN Mineração. We invite also panelists Diogo Carneiro Ribeiro Bueno Martins, Energy Planning Engineer of CEMIG, José Pedrosa, Geotechnical Corporate of Nexa Resources, Guilherme Ferrari, Projects Desiappi Congonhas of the Economic and Social Development Agency of Inconfidence to Alto Paraupeba, Rodrigo Rodrigues de Oliveira, Geotech Manager Hydrogeology of Gerdau, and Vicente Alimento Jr., Director of Specialized Services of Health and Safety, Environment, Operational Risks of Vale. Thank you very much. I pass the floor to you, Hakall. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation. I would just like to make a comment. As Cristiano, we don't know who we thank or we twist their neck, you know. Being here as a chair of this panel, our panel will also be like a talk show. We don't have presentation. It will be, in fact, a chat with regard to the experience of each one. Within our panel, the subjects, territories, shared flood paths, the possible paths for territorial management. I'd like to begin telling a short story that began in 2018 with the City Hall of Congonhas that might be impacted by, at the time, there were 27 or 17, 32 facilities that could be impacted by 32 facilities of tailings and sediment dams. And the municipality asked that integrated work should be done between the main companies, CSN, Gerdau, and Vale. After a lot of discussion, a lot of work, PSB, the Municipal Dam Safety Plan, was implemented, and those who, since the beginning of the process of the project, the management of the work is Adiappi. Guilherme works. He's a consultant of Adiappi. I'd like to ask you, Guilherme, how do you see the main challenges of Adiappi in the manager PSMB? Good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to thank you for the invitation of IBRAM to be on the panel here, which is so important with a theme which today is a novelty for all of us, to work and discuss sharing of flood paths in the same territory that will be impacted by different companies. And I believe that this is the first initiative to discuss, because it's a new theme. It came into legislation with Resolution 83 last year. This valued further the municipal land safety in Congonhas because the discussion began before the legislation. Normally, society as a whole is reactive. Legislation is normally come the problems. The legislation is created, and then there is a movement. The discussion began before the legislation, before a law was imposed. Why? In a given moment, the same spot in the middle of the city had overlapping of 8 flood paths. Now think about it. If each company were to work individually, putting in their signposts, doing their drills, putting in their sirens, instead of having guidance and safety, it would be the opposite. It would generate disorientation. and for there to be other forums that the subject is debated in other moments, that this will be only the first, and that you should involve as well civil defense, both municipal, state, civil defense, to understand what is the view, their view about the work. What's their assessment? What are the challenges? So that is placed there for the next one. There should be the involvement of civil defense to understand the position of them with regard to the work, the shared work. Today is the 5th year of construction, as Hakall commented. It was thought up in 2018 and it was started in 2020. We're in the 5th year of work, and it is a big challenge because it is the 3rd municipal management, or it was thought up in one tenure. There was a change, the plan continues. There was a new municipal election, new tenure, and the plan continued. It became a public policy in the municipality, but what we would really like it to become a law. Why? Even with the support of the management, always there are unique aspects. Today we are discussing the change of the name. As was said a lot in the other panels, Paniado spoke a lot about the difficulty you have with the dam. There's a lot of resistance to that. So we're discussing at the moment the removal of the name dam for various reasons. There's the question of resistance of society. Oh, there's the other side, an idea of cover, of dealing with other risks. That's our role, of taking the focus from the dam and bring it to other risks and territories which are more frequent. Congonhas, there was never any dam at level 1, but floods we have every year. We have landslides every year. We have fires every year. So bring the idea of the plan is that it should be wider and should bring other risks of the municipality. We need the support of the authorities. The plan is municipal. Over the manager, the deliveries in terms of resources, the companies are funders, but the plan is municipal. The main entity is civil defense. It's what gives the guidelines of the plan. But to treat of dams in any territory of Minas Gerais, especially talking about the Iron Quadrangle, it is always complex. Very often, Congonhas never had any problem with dams, but people will always have this concern. And the authorities bring this. We have this resistance, but working a lot with the culture of prevention. We believe that taking the message to the schools, to the community, will manage to create the culture and reduce the difficulty of dealing with dams. There's another difficulty that's inherent to the process. All approval of planning, execution has to go through approval levels or agencies. Civil defense has to approve it, the local authority, and the companies. After all, their name is involved. Any initiative that is proposed, CSN has to approve it, Gerdau has to approve it, Vale, and the municipality. This makes the process a bit slower, but it has to be this way because the image of the companies and the public is ahead of it. So it has to go through approval. We always finish a cycle planning a next one. In 2024, we had everything ready. There was a change in tenure. We had to wait secretaries to take office, to begin to work, to show our planning, and then begin to work. Whenever there's this exchange, we'll have to go through the process of presentation, validation of what we are working on because of the complexity. Today, there are 14 facilities that impact the municipality, so it's still a process which is very complex, and it requires that the work should be, which is the key word, integration, where we can sit at the same table and discuss themes which previously were discussed individually by each company. Thank you. Now, taking advantage and speaking of this integration between the companies and the need for approval by the companies and the authorities, Rodrigo, how do you see what are the mechanisms for coordination between different companies and different businesses and the public authorities with the overlapping of flood paths? First, good afternoon to everybody. I'd just like to say what an honor it is to be with you, with great work colleagues. We have worked in municipal plan in Congonhas, and speaking a theme which is so important, like risk management, crisis management, and creating culture which is preventive in the territory. It's important to say here also, and since in 2018, in fact, I won't go back through the whole story, it's already been referred to by Hakall and Guilherme, the companies had to stop working as individual companies and begin to work collectively for creating this prevention culture, more than this, guide correctly people, because there were many flood paths and they were overlapping. So how are we going to do this? There are many different escape routes, different signposts. Which is the muster point that we go to? This siren belongs to which company? Was it Vale? Was it CSN? Was it Gerdau? This was a factor that drove for us to follow this path, to work jointly. And I'll say more than that. The territories with shared flood paths, this joint work is not desirable, it's necessary for us to be able to work for people in the territory that's affected. Now, looking at the question itself, how do we make it happen? I would say that 3 points which are very relevant for the process. The first was creation of the mutual health GAM. It is the managing council, as it were, of the whole plan, municipal plan. There we have the companies, the civil defense people in there. There was a provocation of how we would use the resources and also have a limitation of technical parameters, and all these discussions, we came to a consensus that a lot of discussion, heated debate, that we should contract a company that would mediate everything, manage it all. So there came Adiappi to work with us, and since then we have worked jointly in GAM, which is the first entity, as it were, which deals with the resources and does the strategic plan for the territory. There's another point that I must mention here. That is the intentions protocol. It's a document which is very important for us. It outlines all legal aspects, compliance, obviously. The companies, each one has a different requirement. We brought it together in a protocol, and it brings a light to roles and responsibilities. And within the protocol, that is signed amongst us and the manager and the city hall of Congonhas. And a third and equally important point that I must mention is that in spite of this, they had to have a common language, because when we talk about an emergency, we have different ways of working, and each company had one within the risks that the company had adopted. And what was the common language adopted? And making recognition of the fire brigade, SEDEC, helped us a great deal in this. Bringing the SCO, the commands and operations language, so that we could work with synergy, jointly, without any doubts of the roles and responsibility of each one there. In fact, it was very important at that time to bring SCO into this context. Basically, we are talking of a drill for more than 13,000 people, more than 100 people involved in the SCO, each from a different company, but everybody knows how to know what they have to do, how it should be done, who they have to report at that moment. I would say SEO was essential for this universal language, for us to be able to have not only more assertive flow between the companies, but especially to pass the command of the incident with the fire brigade, COPDEC, SEDEC, what is happening at that moment in the situation. This, in fact, made this plan as a whole very operational and effective. Thank you very much. Vicente, you are in Vale today. You're also part of PMSB, but Vale has different facilities in other territories. In Congonhas, we know how it works together with PMSB, which you are part of with us. How does it work in other territories? How do you see this challenge to work with other entrepreneurs, with shared? How do you see this in other places that you work? Good afternoon, folks. Well, I think it was a great change in attitude when we start looking only at our scope and began to look at challenges of overlaps of the dam break studies. Beyond the case of Congonhas or GAM, we have scenarios. We have overlapping of with other mining companies. An example, Anglo Gold in Nova Lima, and companies from other sectors, like São Gonçalo do Rio Abaixo. We have a flood part overlap with CEMIG, the state electricity utility. We have some seasoning, as it were, to give greater criticity for the process. In 83, Article 43, the need of the company to escape muster points and escape routes and alert system which are shared. When we talk about muster points and escape route, however, it's obvious, although it seems like a novelty, but that's obvious. It's important to put us in the place as a community and judge. We spoke earlier from people of communication here. The people in the community, they don't have the need to know what is the muster point to go to which company or which dam. That only makes it more difficult. So this is a first step. Now, when you're talking about an alert system, the challenge is greater. And we didn't manage to share with companies, mining companies, because of the automatic triggering of the sirens. If I have a facility with a high potential and I have to be within the national policy, which is automatic triggering, how do I do the management of a false trigger? Mining companies, it's not possible, but we have a case of success with CEMIG in São Gonçalo do Rio Abaixo, because it is a company from a different sector, which is with managed, which doesn't require the automatic triggering of sirens. We were able to put it in a more protocol way. We won a phone call on the hotline that we were discussing. It's a formal record of emergency from one company informing the other company to trigger the sirens. That brings benefits, especially to the community and for the companies implementing escape routes and muster points in jointly, social record jointly. Think about it. Nova Lima, I think, is a very typical case. It has 42 dams. 22 are of Vale. The other 20 are of other companies. Now, on Monday, Vale goes and does the social enrollment. Next month, company B goes by, and the next semester, company C goes by, doing the same thing. So it's very important that we do unification of the efforts to do the social recording, that is, listing drills with the communities, actions of involvement, civil defense in the schools, which is an excellent project that has arisen, until we get to the day of the drill, and all the return about this, of what the process shows, and also the provocation for us to expand. We say a lot about physical resources and technologicals for sharing, but important integration is human resources and efforts to make and make an emergency happen. We think very much, I'm going to share escape route and muster point. But with a real scenario of an emergency on a dam or possible breach, you will need a lot of people involved to mobilize to make everything happen. So we don't even have to look at the site. These were the main challenges we faced and continue to face when we talk about a unified gaze for the territories. Thank you. You commented not just sharing of other entrepreneurs, other mining companies. We have an example here with Giovanni and Diogo of this scenario with the shared flood path and different facilities with different scenarios. I'd like to hear from you, Giovanni, what were the main challenges and the motivators for integration of these drills with companies with regard from different sectors as mining and the CEMIG company? Good afternoon. First place, I would like to thank for the opportunity. We represent Nexa in such an important forum for geotech in Brazil. It's what we have faced over these years. It's important to this exchange of experience here, and especially the question that historically mining, because it's mineral metallurgical, has always been treated as if it worked in silos. Each company working in its way, each company works as they do things, and here we show that we have to step out of our silos and work jointly with other companies, or even from different other sectors, which is our case. Let me talk a bit about the case in Três Marias. In Três Marias, we have a refinery, and we share the territory with CEMIG. I believe that everybody knows we have a big CEMIG dam, hydro in Três Marias, which is one of the biggest water ponds in the world. Next to it, since 2009, Três Marias, they do the drills historically since the events that occurred. According to state legislation, we do the drills since 2019. And since then, we have been talking to CEMIG about integration, of how to do the integration, different sectors. Last year, we had considerable compliance. Today, we have about 300 people in the self-rescue zone, 75%. The hard work that we do in the territory. And as was said very clearly here, in Resolution 83, we have an article that says that territories that converge in the same area, in the same ZAS, must necessarily do drills jointly, even share their escape routes, share their alert systems, monitoring centers, create a plan, the involvement of municipal and state civil defense, and we had 2 points in Três Marias. The first point, the challenge of changing significant the flood path. We are talking here, the Visseni brought the case of Vale. The flood path is very similar. We are speaking of companies of the same sector. I participated at the beginning of the construction of Langon in Congonhas, companies in the same sector. In Três Marias, no, we're talking of the facilities which are relatively small compared to the facility of CEMIG. That is, the number of people impacted can increase 10 times. So the main challenge is, how do we do this? How do we integrate? Another point, equally important. Here we have different legislation. The legislation that we have today for the mineral, metallurgical, industrial is different from the electrical sector, even with frequencies which are different, to do drills, practical drills. That's why it's a little different. And in terms of the concept Visseni raised here, Vale shares the territory with other companies, but they're the sector, even mining specifically, which necessarily you have to do drills every year. It's not the case, for example, of the electrical sector. How do you integrate this? We discussed, and Nexa and CEMIG, involving civil defense of the municipalities, and Resolution 83, we took it to our colleagues of SEDEC, that Article 21 that says if in exceptional cases should be treated in a specific chamber, and even propose alternatives to drills, how would be the best form of integration. And we took our case, even out of curiosity to know if in the state and in a scenario like ours. And we concluded that the scenario of Três Marias, and so beginning during the 2024, we talked a lot with the people from civil defense, CEMIG, with civil defense to create an alternative for our scenario. And this year, we would do the drill jointly with CEMIG for the first time. We are building this drill, which has a challenge of changing escape routes, changing muster points. People who previously were not in Azaz are now inside Azaz. So it is a challenge. And communication, integration with the community, and understanding, doing door-to-door education, for us to do the first drill this year. And in the next years, instead of doing a drill, total drill with everybody over the next 2 years, do sectoral work, educational, in schools, presenting tools that can be used in drills, for example, PROX, and every 3 years doing a drill which is more fuller. Thank you very much. Both you and Visseni brought the question of Resolution 83, Article 43, that companies that have shares that share thus the same value of the must share the escape routes, muster points, and signage, adopting alarms which are unified. I'd like to take advantage, include Diogo in our discussion here, who is very quiet. How do you see the proposal of the unified alert system, considering the different technologies and the scope of the areas of risk? I'm an innovator in the mining sector, but it has a lot to do with the panel, which is integration. So CEMIG for some time has been in the discussion, both with the IBRAM and the other companies. It is not just a question of the shared territories, but also this culture of exchanging discussions. We all had a great deal of contact with Vale, with Samarco, even before these specific subjects or drills of. So I think that more than thinking about the technology, just think about the people. We have a great challenge in Três Marias, which is how do we run an integrated alert system? Because of the size of the area, we're talking of about 300, 400 people, going on to 7,000 people. So before the drills every year, listen to the sirens, but they were told not to leave. Now, in the unified system, we have a different discourse. We have to agree that whenever the siren rings, anybody here has to go to a muster point. It is a big switch, a big turnaround, not just of technology or procedure. The idea is to have a hotline as well. We operate a hotline with Nexa. We will learn from the electrical section. We operate a substation inside the beneficiation plant in Três Marias and have the same procedure for the alert system. when we operate the system, we have the same confidence that we have today for a risk which is routine in the plant.
To separate a plant the size we have, the Nexa plants in Ceremonies, it's a risk for people. There's a very strict safety protocol for this joint operation. So when we talk about doing an integration and triggering an alarm, we need to talk about those people who are going to listen to the alarm. We're going to have this challenge this year of showing the before scenario. It was simpler, but now you are in a risk scenario. PROX is going to be a hub for information. When it comes to helping convincing people that this is an effective alarm system, we need to know, now they need to know what is the safe place they need to go to when an alarm is sound. To us, it's also important to have the presence of other players in the sectors, but we have a bigger presence. But mining drives the local economy. There are more employees that belong to that territory. We've been with Nexa last week. William was there. He was in the territory. The PABM coordinator is there. To us, people on the outside, it's a much more streamlined structure, but we are learning from those people that live this daily routine. They're the target audience and also spokespeople for this. It's beneficial for everybody in the end. We're talking about what Guilherme was saying. The objective is to help people, to protect people. It's not only about delivering a PABM, it's about making people safer. It's not just an evacuation drill of the CEMIG dam, it's a safety drill. We are spreading the safety culture all the time. A little bit of the challenge we have in mining as well, of the automatic triggering in the electrical sector. We have another pain point, which is the cyber attack. More than a concern of having a false positive alarm, is something, like an attack to our spillway in Três Marias. The last time the spillway was working was 2022. That was a very complex situation by itself, so imagine if in the same network that we are using to trigger the alarm, we have another cyber hack of the floodgates. In São Gonçalo de Rio Abaixo, another municipality, we live with that as well. There's a reservoir there, which is more or less the same size. But the perception of risk from the population is different. They see us as the river's operator. They don't see us as the dam risk. But we suffer the same harassment. The feeling that the population gets, it's a different bias though. But then we started to flip the switch. The drill started being an evacuation drill for the population, performed by Plancon. Today it's less Vale, it's less CEMIG, it's very neutral for the municipality. For this perception to be able to happen, everybody joining, coming together to help the population stay safe. The idea is that we, at every drill, we add new safety layers for the SEO as well culture that we were mentioning. Implemented a lot earlier in Vale. This is going to happen too. To have this unified control center. It's a great technical gain for everybody. The electrical sector has a federal level regulation which is much looser. ANEEL says this openly. They prefer that the owner takes this technical risk. If you want to do something simpler, you're taking the risk. So it's up to you to decide. At the same time, it's a good idea to standardize, to go back to what I was just mentioning. People are the focus. It's no point to think in a way and taking such a risk if Nexa is already building a relationship with the population, the schools, business owners, it's raising the bar. The idea, the resolution from the state, I think, is about that. Sharing the territory is about that, and it's mandatory for those under state policy. A lot of it goes this way. It's people, we're all on the same boat, for sure. And I got a question that's closely related to that. Both Diogo and Rodrigo elaborated on this. So the next question for Rodrigo is about the command post during emergencies and the respective responsibilities. It's a question for Pedro. How are these divisions happening? We're just mentioning the definition of the roles and responsibilities of the company is a great challenge when it comes to RPSB. We have a lot of owners sharing the same territory, and this is a great challenge. How do you see this? Can you not ask this question to somebody else? Well, if I could summarize this in a nutshell, the base for all of this to happen, I would say, is transparency, collaboration, and active listening. We need that. The degree of maturity of the SEO work within each company has been a lot different from what we have today. In the beginning, we had a lot of more experience on the topic, and we sought a lot of help from SEDEC and the fire department to develop that. And in real life, we worked hard to define who would be the chiefs, the leaders of the operation center. The chief in Vale had a fundamental role in the beginning. And I cannot forget to mention two magic words, planning and training. That's the mantra. And actually, what we're doing today in the meetings, because we hold meetings not in the SEO format, but in the Unified Command Center, discussing the topics on the technical group together with the deputy chief. We actually changed the way that we worked in SEO, which is not that common, not perceptible in the companies I've been in. I think this was a great flip of a switch to us when it comes to changing perception of what we can gain in efficiency. We need quick answers to help keep people safe, whether they are in the ZES or in the integrated flood map, wherever they are. We need a lot of velocity. I actually think that SEO changed the game for us. Definition began like this. Today we have a routine, and we work in shifts. The chiefs were started taking turns so that they could work equally in each section. And if you're not used to the SEO system, it's important to point out that we have Unified Command Center, and it's split up into 4 sections: operations, planning, logistics, and administrative and financial. This is our SEO, our drill center, and the way we work during emergencies. We've made those changes, and it's been positive for us. Obviously, as I said earlier, it's a matter of planning and training. We will finish the year with the next year already designed in terms of planning, not only for drills, but for training sessions and minding the municipal plan, how it could be taught in schools as well. People who are in the community, the key people, it could also be the civil defense. All of this has helped us in this process. I would say that There are many possibilities, and it's closely related to training and planning. Of course, because we trust each other, we've been working together for 5 years in this plan. I believe we've overcome this barrier. Rodrigo, I just remembered something that's very important. When we look at the territories of shared flood maps, it's important for us to make it clear for the community where we share those flood maps that there could be a cascade failure where one dam is going to trigger another dam's failure. And in most of the cases, we'll have scenarios where the dams share the same territory, but the simultaneous failure of the structures is very unlikely to happen, right? This has to be made clear for the community. Otherwise, they will think the fact that we share the territory and performing joint drills is that the three dams are going to break simultaneously, and this doesn't make sense. It's very important to make this clear. And the owner of the incident in these cases where there isn't a cascade effect is going to be the accountable owner. And there will be a benefit of sharing this integrated command center with other owners. That's what it means to manage shared territories. Just a quick one to add about our command center, talking about an SCO. It's a practice where the command of the society is always the municipal coordinator, so the civil defense provides the guidelines. It's the commander of the drills. We've held many of them, and during an emergency situation, the COMPDEC coordinator is the key person providing guidelines, and the NSCO manages training. But it's a flexible methodology, and there are over 100 people involved. It's not only our staff providing support to the Unified Command, over 30 people. That's why we created a staff chief of section, which is not in the methodology. We did that because there are so many roles, there are so many people involved that it was necessary for us to, appoint somebody to be the chief to make communication easier. Because you go there, if there are so many people without a single one appointed to be this, the single leader, to be the chief of communication, to ask, to provide guidelines. So we define this, the NSCO, SCO allows this to define the chief of section for the staff. Thank you. Giovanni, in this scenario, in PSB we are a little bit used to that, but in our day-to-day, what are the next steps? We know that we're going to have a practical drill this year. When it comes to data integration between Nexa and CEMIG, what are you guys expecting in relation to the engagement of the community when it comes to the future drills? How do you guys see that? That is the challenge. It's a joint work. CEMIG and Nexa working together, engagement with the community, especially people who were not in the flood map before, but now they are. Besides that, the changes in escape routes. Remember, we hold drills since 2019, and in a certain point in time, we are changing the meeting points, the escape routes. This joint work with the community, it's educational work, an important one, engaging with the community and the municipal state, or the municipal civil defense, which is important. And the next challenge is especially this issue of integrating the alert and emergency systems, unlike the mining sector. Paniago has said recently that we are going to remove the automatic siren triggering system. This is great for all of us. But in the steelmaking industry, that's not mandatory. We don't have in Três Marias automatic triggering, but now we should integrate all our sirens with CEMIG. Today, our sirens, in theory, are within a flood map because it considers our flood map. These sirens should be relocated, others will be installed and integrated, and the integration of the Geotechnical Monitoring Center, our CMG, in Três Marias, alongside the monitoring center of CEMIG. There are great challenges. The creation of a plan as well is included in that package. That's why it's so nice to hear from my colleagues and all of the work you did to reach the level where you are today. We are working towards this integration. We're working hard towards that. In this integration, as I said in the beginning, we are no longer working in silos. We are working together. There's an additional benefit due to the fact of different regulations. In Três Marias' case, we're holding drills every 3 years. Doesn't mean we are the most flexible. We just treat it as a different case. In CEMIG, we have a total of 18 emergency response plans. Três Marias, no doubt, is our hardest case. The flood map is going, it reaches Sobradinho in the next state with an 8-meter high wave. That's our biggest headache. In Três Marias, I've got 18,000 hectometers. It's a whole other scale. The idea, going back to people, is that in this interval we focus on communication, not only on drills. Drills are great, they're amazing. People need to know the escape route, the meeting points. But we should also focus on other methods. We began now with schools. There was a very good attendance. People liked the topics. But and we have other efforts as well. We have the PROX workshop. We're gonna need to see this more massive presence. It's actually good, so we don't feel frustrated. We need to use this interval to get better engagement, and so the final product is a drill, not a drill that's pointless. And sometimes they lose efficiency. We hear a lot from the population when we're going to give workshops and knock on the doors, and they tell us, well, I was part of this drill last year, why do I need to go this year? The preventative culture is very important, but we still don't have this deeply rooted in our population. We know that. We work in the mining companies. Whenever you hear a siren, you know what to do. And as it was said in the first panel, you always stop and think, do I really need to leave? Before anything else, that's what you think. We actually need to improve our culture to take action and to get more safety. I'm going to go back to that topic, but first I'm going to tease Vicente a little bit. I'm going to torment him a little bit. As Paniago mentioned in the panel earlier, we finished with the agro system last year, agro cycle. When we talk about this integration, because the cycle is designed for that specific structure, considering that signs in field and the drills are items evaluated in the process, in the conformance checking process of the PABM, how to make sure that the roles and responsibilities are clear and there is no doubt about it when it comes to joint work if more than one company is involved. There's an important point there. The DACO cycle there is yearly 52 weeks, and part of this is the validation of escape routes and meeting points. Imagine the challenge it is when we've got an overlap of flood maps, and that includes more than one structure, and when this involves more owners. And pardon the jargon, but at this moment it sounds like the stray dog. Oh, his drill. That's a drill for failure. But how am I going to efficiently manage a territory to make sure that on the first month, Vale is responsible for maintenance. Month two is Gerdau, and if CSN runs into trouble, they can't fulfill their inspection program, and they hinder our own. It's nice to have clear roles and responsibilities. And the management of this package is the best of both worlds when you move this responsibility to a managing company that's going to operate this. And when we talk about drills, the same thing. I could have three owners holding a single event that's been validated for companies A, B, and C with different judgment criteria. Everything needs to be well written. That's why it's important for us to work on our legal framework. We could put together a mutual help uh, group. There's a lot of stuff when we talk about compliance. Well, I have a compliance or conformity issue here. There could result in a negative result. It's important for us to look at the practical side of things as well. Imagine the impact that this could have in an actual emergency. The biggest lesson learned, once again, we need to take care with the dog of many owners because it's the one that dies of starvation. Yeah, that's really important. Going back to the topic you were mentioning when it comes to that issue that we talk about since the first panel, communication and risk perception, how do you view that, Diogo? Does the population perceive the risk according to each dam? These are two different kinds of dams. You have in the Tres Marias, you have a hydro plant dam and a steel making plant there. You have, well, it's ore processing and steel making. What's the perception of the public when it comes to risk? Well, Tres Marias, once again, it's one of a kind. There's a lot of difference of perception because of the size of the dam. Anywhere in the town you see the dam from a kilometer away. So it's hard for us to create the culture. And the people just think, well, if it breaks, everybody dies. There's nothing to do. It's a very strong impact. But in the end, we can revert some of it using the preventative culture. If on one hand we scare them off more because of the size, we need to be there and show them the risk. We're talking about this in the first panel. There is a risk, but if the communication isn't there, you're not conveying perception. It's just, I think this or that. A very large dam with a lot of water, so it remains unanswered. But we need to convey this message. We need to let them know that there is an answer. I need you to join hands with me, to work with me. You need to pay attention. If there's some fake news around, you need to know. We have this peculiar challenge in Tres Marias. It's a very large dam. It's something that people are scared of it due to its sheer size. But in São Gonçalo, I had mentioned earlier, we saw it in the Aldermans. The perceptions that we are the cause of floods in the city, but at the same time it helps us be present. Jean is already in the second term. He engages with us really well. He's got my personal mobile phone. So we are very close. We communicate very frequently due to these characteristics of the power sector, power industry. We are more present in people's routine. This has its pros and cons. In São Gonçalo is easier to communicate, but in Três Marias, once again, it's my greatest challenge. How do I convey this message? How do I let people know that the dam is large, but there is enough time to evacuate, and there's also the preventative evacuation. Paniago mentioned about this assumption that we use, which is the dam's already broke. We need to try and deconstruct that. It is a large dam, but it's not broke. There is time to evacuate if there's anything going wrong. The focus on the message is on the presence in the territory. I just wanted to add that that's why this work done in schools is amazing. Civil defense being present in schools. Nexa also is there in other territories and schools. It's very efficient. This preventative culture, we all know here that in Brazil we're still reactive. In the Iron Quadrangle, we have a lot of drills because of the accidents of our history. But if we go to other territories, we know the efficiency is different. The work being done in schools is amazing. I've got a great example in my own house with my child. He saw a civil defense representative, and he said, "Dad, did you know these are heroes?" And I asked him, "Is that true?" He said, "Yeah. Do you not work in dams? But there are also floods. They work in floods, not only in dams." And I thought that was so cool. The work being done in schools, raising awareness. It's so amazing. We need to work harder still to develop this preventative culture further. We're talking about dams here, but not only dams. PROX also incorporates this. We can use that too in working this out in schools and municipal civil defenses. We're going to have amazing improvement, and that's what we already see. I agree. Now, let me just give you an example. It's not only related to dams, but one day my daughter came from school and we were going into our house. Probably something happened in school that day because when we got into the building, she looked at the fire extinguisher and she started inspecting it. And she's only 10. She started inspecting it. She saw the symbols and she said, "Oh, Mom, this fire extinguisher is no good. There's not enough pressure. I can tell because of the pressure gauge. You see the pointer there? It's on the red zone. We need to ask people to change it." And children, if we instruct them, they're going to help us out too, and we're going to build the next generation's culture. And we have another question here, and this for Rodrigo. Considering that the sirens are considered critical assets, because they are recorded in the respective companies, how do you make sure they are well maintained? Well, I have to answer that, right? That's a great question, and actually we've worked in a way to be redundant, and ultimately we could forget the maintenance plan, which is an extremely important point. What we've been doing there is to issue monthly reports, and I'm talking specifically about Gerdau, but we've been discussing this in the PMSB. Wagner, the coordinator of CUPDEC, he asked us to do that so that we could send frequently an assessment of how the sirens were. We actually discussed the idea of sounding them We started discussing that, but then we gave up the idea. We moved on to the, soundless test at volume 0, just to make sure it was working.
The eventually monthly plan is very important for us to do the monitoring. Obviously, each company also looking specifically to their protocol to assure the functioning of the sirens of Vale. I talk a lot with Brasileiro. I've talked about it with us, as well as in Gerdau. We do sporadic tests, random tests. Beside the rest, we have the functioning. I also ensure CSN, we in the municipal plan, but I would like if it goes along these paths. This transparency with civil defense, quoting the case of civil defense of Congonhas, where we deliver monthly a report of the functioning of the sirens, ensuring that all the system is functional. A brief observation. It's important to take advantage of what was said. Resolution 83, item 42, alert system cannot be only a siren. So take advantage to recognize the work of IBRAM with Júlio Alalini, which was with IBRAM to make a review in the guidance of the CEO National, where we begin to expand the range of opportunities. Who in the metropolitan Greater Belo Horizonte area must have seen the broadcast which alerts that rings on a phone when there's an expectation of a great rainfall. We have PROX, which is giving great opportunities for communication. Vale has communicated with ICMS. So SMS, the great provocation is because the siren is good, it's important, you have to have the siren, but not necessarily be the silver bullet. It might be a situation where a isolated community, the most effective mean is not the sirens, it's some other means. Maybe in case of Congonhas, you can do a broadcast without great difficulty, have a good phone coverage. We encourage the agencies to think of multiple forms of communication, not just sirens. It doesn't cover everything. You have a truck driver in the traffic, he won't hear the siren. He won't hear the siren. If his phone power rings with a broadcast, suddenly he will respond, and increases the possibilities a great more. It doesn't have to be only the sirens. I agree fully. We need to take advantage and improve the way we work, how we see this. And as a final question, taking advantage of the rest of our time here, Guilherme, you who are in this Desiang with the PSMB, what have you seen? What are the strategy PSMB has adopted to promote a prevention culture in communities which are subject to multiple risks? First, it's important to reinforce the idea of the plan. It goes well beyond what legislation of sharing escape routes, muster points, sirens, creating a single guideline for the entrepreneurs who have dams, and for communication, which is never mentioned in legislation. It is integrated, it's unified. So if today a facility has any problem, not municipal, not a CSN or Gerdau or Vale, the communication is integrated. There we have PSMB in the school, civil defenses in the school, we create PSMB in the schools. So the guideline, CSN were to do the work in the schools, it would be done one way. Vale in Gerdau, civil defense would create a single way of operating, and the guidelines which are discussed in the technical axis, how the work will be done in the schools. And the work is done in all the schools that are in the flood path. as well as the civil defense. So you create a single strategy, what communities we worked on, which criteria will be used, defined, creating parameter to define the community is more exposed to risk, going beyond the question of the dam, as I said. In rainy season, the communities that suffer with rain every year, if we were to talk about in that community, we have to have guidelines to work on situations of flooding. It's no good arriving and speak only about dams, because the reality of the community is different. It lives constantly with other kinds of risk, not only the risk of dams. We have tried to take a single message, integrated message, working with the other risks, always saying that the dams are safe, because I have this concern. We come here to talk PSMB, talk about dams, because some that have a risk of damping. So we always say the dams are safe, they have always been. Once again, there was no dam. They got to level 1 of we say this to them. Before closing a discussion we have that's important, that needs to be expanded, is integration not only of entrepreneurs, but municipal civil defense. Today, there isn't an integration. The municipality, which has borders with another one and has the same self-rescue zone, one does the drill in April, another one in September, in the same flood path. So why not integrate as well? Why aren't the drills done jointly? What, in a risk situation, a real emergency situation, civil defense will work jointly. You have to be prepared to work jointly. And the drill is a kickoff for the civil defense to work jointly, even to have a good interaction, but it has to be in practice, work jointly, because any risk will work, because there's sharing. Maybe it can get into the legislation, we don't know, but it's a best practice, and we will do this. Bring the civil defense together so as the work is integrated. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We have asked all the questions. We'd like to thank you, Giovanni, Guilherme, Rodrigo, and Vicente. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank each one of you. Thank you, Hakall. Let's take a position for the photograph, please.